So bring out the song in me, crescendos past tragedies, and while Hey Joy Chasers, welcome back to the channel. It's Dr. Naima Johnston Bush from The Refreshing Life with Naima, where our goal is to journey to joy. And on that journey, of course, we have to pursue our passion and do what God has called us to do, fulfill our destiny. And so one of the things that the Lord has laid on my heart is to definitely help people to build the ministry or the Christian business that He's called them to build for such a time as this, because each and every one of us has a unique job that only we can do. And one of my jobs is to help you do that job. And if that sounds good to you, will you hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you know every time a new video is loaded up. On Fridays, we're going to be looking at ministry building, development, all that good stuff, particularly music ministry. But I've been a church administrator, I've helped plant churches, and I've built music ministries from the ground up. And so, you know, I've got a lot of knowledge I'd love to share with you that the Lord has blessed me with. So hit that subscribe button and let's jump into it. As some of you know, we have been doing a series on the 4 things, 1, 2, 3, 4, that keep people from fulfilling their God-given dream, and we're actually on number 3. I thought I could do all 4 in one video, but the video would have been much too long. And so now we're on number 3. So we'll do number 3, and then we'll do number 4, and then we'll move on to another topic. If there's a specific topic about ministry building that you would like to know about or hear about, and it's in my wheelhouse, I will be more than happy to speak on it. Just leave that in the comments below. So I've got my handy dandy notes. The first thing that we talked about was the number 1 thing that keeps people from pursuing their God-given dream, purpose, passion, destiny, ministry, whatever that might be that God has called you to, is fear. Fear is the number 1 dream killer. So go back and check out video 1 in this series. Number 2 is what we perceive as a lack of resources. Even though we say God has cattle on 1,000 hills, we think to ourselves, I don't have the things that I need to do what God has called me to do. But there's always a way to find those things. Sometimes it's just good old-fashioned fasting and praying. I didn't say that in the last video because I was more along the lines of talking about the practical, because I believe that the practical, when it meets the supernatural, merge together to create what it is God has called you to do. The supernatural always oversees or is always bigger than the practical, but sometimes there's just some practical things that have to be done when you build a ministry. Like you have to find a lawyer to, you know, file your 501c3 paperwork. The Lord may miraculously bring that lawyer to you as you fast and pray, but you still have to fill that paperwork out. So that's what I mean when I say the practical meets the supernatural, and the two together create what it is God has called you to do. So lack of resources, but you're never really at a lack. One of the things that I once heard was people always say, you know, if God gave you the vision, He'd give you the provision. And I know some people who have used that as an excuse not to move forward. And I once heard someone say, sometimes you don't get the provision because the provision you think you need is not the provision you need after all. Did I hear somebody say it, or did I say it? I might have said it. I don't know. So number 3 is one of my favorite ones. And this one means more to me now than I think it ever did before. I started in full-time ministry when I was in my early 30s, like 30, 32. I was fortunate in that I went to college, and then I went straight from undergrad to graduate school. And so I had a master's degree before I was 25. And then it took a long time to get a PhD, but I had a PhD before I was 35. And was in full-time ministry from the time I was about 32 up until how old I am now. And so I've never been one that, like, lots of people have thought, well, I've heard of her, or she's super famous, but I have a very supportive network, and I've been afforded the opportunity to minister 70, 80 dates a year. Maybe no one's heard of me. Maybe I've never sung on the Stellars, but I have had a ministry that has been fulfilling, that has allowed me to see the country, and that I believe God has called me to. And it's just as important as, what somebody else is doing, because God cares about the soul. He'll lead a 99 to go after the one. And so never think that, because your platform may not be as big as such and such's platform, that you can't have a full-time, fulfilling, passionate ministry that is doing what God has called you to do. That was my rabbit trail for this video. So anyway, you think it's too late, but I just want to encourage you that it is never too late. As long as there is breath in your body, there is time for you to begin to pursue whatever it is God has called you to pursue. Now, it may not look like it originally might have looked when you first dreamed the dream. It may be something totally different, but branching off of that dream, but it's never, ever too late, because God gives you the dream for the advancement of the kingdom. We each have a dream, and the dream is not for us. The dream is not, it is not our personal, it's ours personally, because he personally gives it to us, but it's not for our personal enjoyment. It's to build the kingdom. It's to be a blessing to someone else, to a specific number of people you've been called to reach, encourage, bless, share the word with, serve, whatever it is, and that can be in the marketplace, and that can be in the ministry. So it just kind of depends what God has in mind. As long as you have the strength in your body, you have the time. As long as you woke up, you have some time. So I always think about Abraham, because so often, we tell the story of Abraham, and we forget about all the things that happened before Abraham got the promise. He was messing around with his nephew Lot. He was messing around in Egypt. Got his sister all jacked up, because it was his wife, but it was his sister. He said it was his sister, and then Pharaoh took Sarah. And then Sarah want to get in on the groove, and she want to give him the handmaiden. And okay, if you've never read the story of Abraham, please go back and read it, because that is the Dr. Bush paraphrase. But the gist of the story is that Abraham had to wait a very, 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 very long time to see the promise of God fulfilled. And if it wasn't too late for Abraham or Sarah, then it's not too late for us. Sarah had her baby, the promised child, Isaac, when she was 90 years old, and then lived, I guess, another 40 years to see him grow to manhood. And I carry that promise, because for such a long time, my husband and I, we've been married almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years next month. September. It'll be 10 years in September. We prayed and prayed and prayed for a child, and it just wasn't happening. It just wasn't happening. It just wasn't happening. We had always planned to adopt. That was always part of our plan. But we had also wanted to have some children of our physical body. And it just didn't happen. And so now we have these two wonderful foster babies. One is 19 months and the other one is 3. And we don't know, their destiny, in terms of, we don't know if we'll get to raise them to maturity or if they'll go home. They've been with us a very, very long time. 17 months. They've been with us 17 months, which is really a long time. But we don't know. We don't know what the outcome will be. But for some reason, God in his infinite wisdom thought that I would be better as a mother after what I like to call the backside of 45, which is hilarious to me, because they say the older you get, the more wisdom you have. And in terms of raising a child, I don't care how old you are. I did the wisdom. Let me go talk to some 20-year-olds. Maybe they know more than I do. They've been moms longer. I don't know. But I'm on the backside of 45 trying to raise these 2 kids. And the child brain, I don't understand how it just why you do that? I don't know. Why you hit him? I don't know. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. Yeah. I always said there's not much difference between toddlers and college students. But, yeah, he's not my friend. He touched me, took my stuff, that kind of thing. But, okay, rabbit trail number 2. But anyway, my point is this. Abraham had to do some specific things. And in his case, it was, he had to travel someplace specific, and then he had to believe. For some people, that is a chore. But in this waiting, and in his faithfully waiting and believing God, even when he wiggled, God counted it to him as righteousness. How do you get counted as righteous when God gives you a promise and tells you, I'm going to do it, and then you turn around and try to make it happen with the handmaiden? But God still counted him as righteous, and through him, all the nations of the earth have been blessed. So we can't sit up here and say, it's too late for me, when Abraham and Sarah, after all of the mistakes that they made, after all the times they came up short, after all of the wrong turns that they made, were still, Sarah, she in the tent laughing? She heard a promise of the Lord, she laughing like, and God still blessed her. So if he did it for them, and he has a call on your life, why wouldn't he do that for you? It's not too late. It is not too late. Now, like I said, the dream might be different. You may have always dreamed to have been, I don't know, a figure skater. I like to use that example. I like to use that example because that's an example that has some age restriction in it. You got 2 choices, and you now in your 40s. You got 2 choices. You can either believe God and say, I'm going to be the oldest Olympian ever to win the silver medal at the Olympics at the age of 50, and then start training and see what God says about that. Or maybe, after you pray and fast about it, God says, I want you to go to the local skating rink and meet up with the local coach who is training these Olympians, and I want you to volunteer to work with them to help train this next generation of skaters, and to have Bible study with them. And then you help raise up the next Olympian who gives all the credit to God through the words that you sowed and the spirit that you imparted to them and the prayers that you prayed over them. And thousands of people get saved because they're standing on a platform that they would not have stood on if you hadn't come along and done what you did. Was it your ultimate dream to be a figure skater? No. But it's still in the vein of that particular area of passion. So what is it God is calling you to do with the dream at this time? Sometimes the dream requires, an alteration because of disobedience, because of opportunity, because maybe that wasn't God's will. You thought it was God's will, but maybe it's not God's will. I always thought that I was going to be on a big bus, winning Dove Awards and being a big bus and traveling and, being in concert with, Michael W. Smith and CeCe Winans. And that was not what God's plan was for me. But one of the things that I came to understand, even though that was not God's plan for me, I was out and in front of more people than I ever could have imagined. I might not have been in a stadium or, leading worship for Hillsong, but I definitely was in a place where, in an average year, I would minister to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people, just going from church to church to church, sometimes more than that. I think one year I got up to almost like 8,000 or 9,000 people. And so, it's not being too late. What does the dream look like now? Let the Lord alter it however he sees fit, because nothing catches him by surprise. One of my favorite verses, and I'm finishing up right about now, because I don't like the videos to go much longer than 18 minutes, is Ecclesiastes 11 verse 4, and it says, if this is the New Living Translation, if we wait for conditions to be perfect, we will never accomplish anything. We'll never get anything done. So if you wait for perfect conditions, you will never get anything done. That's Ecclesiastes 11 verse 4 from the Living Bible. And when I was in college and I pledged my sorority, I remember we had to memorize this poem, and I don't even know if I can still say it, but it was excuses. Excuses are tools of the incompetent, used to build monuments of nothingness. Sorry about that. Of course, you know, my do not disturb does not work, but the poem went, excuses are tools of the incompetent, used to build monuments of nothingness. Those who specialize in them will never accomplish anything. Yeah. So look what the scripture says. If you wait for perfect conditions, what you perceive as perfect conditions, because a lot of times that's what we're really waiting for. We're waiting for everything to fall in place. We're waiting for the kids to get out of school before we start. We're waiting for our marriage to get better before we start. We're waiting for us to save up some money before we start. We're waiting for somebody to give us permission before we get started. But the scripture tells us if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll never get anything done, because we live in an imperfect, fallen world, and it's never going to get better. It might look like it gets better during seasons, but right now I think we all can agree that it's not better, because we're coming up on the end times, and you don't want to be found not doing what God has called you to do. So I was given an assignment. I want you to take a minute and ask yourself, what does my dream entail that is limited by time? Ask yourself, what does my dream entail that is limited by time? And then once you find out what that is, I want you to make a list of all the limitations that you feel you're facing because it's too late, or that you're waiting on. And I want you, of course, then to bring them before the Lord in prayer and ask the Lord to reveal to you, how your original dream should look now. Because you think it's too late, which means you think you missed the opportunity. So maybe the dream needs to change a little. Maybe it needs alteration. So ask the Lord, what would you have me do, Lord? Journal those answers, and then make a commitment to do one thing every day to move your dream forward. If the one thing is asking somebody to pray for you, if it's making a call to see what it takes to get incorporated, if it's taking $20 and opening up a bank account, if you can't do one thing every day, then commit to one thing every 3 days. Don't do longer than a week, because then it just won't happen. It just won't happen. And you'll look back at the end of your life and be like, what did I do? I once heard, and I know I didn't say this, I once heard somebody said, the richest place on earth is the cemetery, because it's filled with people who have million dollar ideas and gifts and all kinds of greatness inside them that they never shared with the world because they were too fearful. They didn't think they had the resources. This part I'm saying, they didn't think they had the resources. They thought it was too late. Or number 4, which we'll get into next week. So be encouraged. I'd love to hear, what it is you think about what I've had to share. Feel free to leave a comment. Please share this video with anyone who has a dream and wants to pursue it. And that's about it. So once again, this is Dr. Naima Johnston Bush from The Refreshing Life with Naima, helping you to live a life of joy by pursuing your passion. And you be encouraged and get to it. You have everything you need. It's not too late. And fear is of the devil, for God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Be blessed.